Terms and conditions apply.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Talk That Get Results. I'm Webbo Herbert, and as per usual, we are here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line, address it to a Let's Talk program in Care of On Radio, PO Box 195 Charlestown in Nevis, or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers 1-869-469-1616 or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized, and when you're getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything that we deem that is not within our broadcast standards. But we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Talk That Get Results. Now you can also follow our live video stream of this program on our YouTube channel on Vaughan Radio. Click subscribe, and also our Facebook page, Vaughan Radio. Thank you all again for joining us, your voice in the community, Talk That Get Results. Tonight, Roger Fifield, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and good evening to my fellow panelists. Of course, I want to say a special good evening to all those who are listening near and far via the various medium, whether you are listening or viewing. And there are two special ladies that I want to say good evening to. One in Canada, Mrs. Liebert, and my former boss at A&M Enterprises, Miss Annette Morton. Good evening, ladies. I hope you will be enjoying the show tonight. Webbo, I want to say happy birthday to all those who are celebrating and birthdays and those who are celebrating anniversaries. But special mention must be made of King Miko. He is celebrating today. I'm hoping that he had a wonderful day and tonight would be even better. Webbo, to those who are mourning, firstly those who are hospitalized, I want to say a speedy recovery to you, and of course that you would get well the soonest and be home with your loved ones. For those who are bereaved, we sympathize with you. We ask you to hold on strong to God, allow him to be your rock, your pillar of strength, and he would see you through in this most difficult time. Well, back to the congratulatory segment, so to speak. I want to congratulate my team, the Easterns cricket team. We would have won the second division Nevis Cricket Association second division 2020 championship Saturday gone. And so I want to extend congratulations to Easterns. I think they did really well. We would have made the finals at least 2 times within the past 5 years, I think, if memory serves me right. And we actually won, and I think that that's a championship that would have eluded us for many years, and I think that it was well deserved. The guys, they work hard, they stuck to the guns, and we were able to come out champions. And again, congratulations to the team, all our supporters and well-wishers. Congratulations. Yeah, Webbo, I'm hoping tonight that persons would call in. This is an interactive program. We can learn something from you. You can learn something from us. And of course, at the end of the night, you know, we would have a fruitful and healthy discussion. Once again, thank you, Webbo, for the invitation.
Glendale Herbert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. It's always a pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to speak to the country and those far afield, those in the diaspora. People are into, I've always said it's the show of record where people tune into from all over to understand and to get up to date as to what's happening here in our federation. And of course, I would say, in addition, particularly for Nivigans, it's a show that means a lot to Namibians in terms of what's happening here in this country. I think we're at a watershed moment in this country, and I would say even more so significantly here in Nevis, in terms of the direction and where we're going, in terms of where we'll end up, and what history would, how history would look at what the decisions we're making right now, and reflection. And I for one would always want to be on the right side of history as it relates to decisions that are made, in the day and the current right now. Webbo, there are a lot to speak about. The Premier had a press conference today. There are one or two things that jumped out at me that I found rather interesting, particularly because so many people are interested. People are marching in the streets. There in St. Kitts, one march last week, Friday, one of the first ones I've seen, march in terms of a full-fledged march. And there is a lot of consternation. There has been a lot of questions. It's something on everybody's mind, the EEZ, the zone that has been termed in many ways in many different descriptions, from sovereignty zone to zone, economic zone, all this sort of thing. These are words that's been thrown around to describe it. But it's impactful. The Premier spoke today, he spoke about it. I think it's up for review and discussion as to what the Premier said as it relates to his press conference today. In his press conference today, the Premier said the investors approach some time ago, and he told them to go and come back when you have something in place. Go and speak to the specific agencies from planning and all the rest, and not just planning, but acquire the lands. That would have taken some time. That's not an overnight thing. That took a few years, which would have been 3 years out, from my estimation and the knowledge I have, as it relates to the people who are out making outreach to the landowners. So we're talking some three years back when I thought about it. So the Premier the approach would have been made some time back. The Premier said today that an application came to him sometime in July, August of this year. And so the application finally came to him. I know the company would have been registered in June of last year, 2024, registered by the principals here on Nevis. Now the question as to which comes first is a question. It's the big elephant in the room. And there's always why is it so much up for review? In many ways, is question of ethics is always out there. It's out there in the atmosphere, in the ether. The question not just of ethics but propriety. The Premier is the Premier. The person the Premier says, his wife, I'm speaking. The Premier is someone I speak to, and we get along well when we see each other. But I must be frank. The question is, there's a question on the people's mind as to, the Premier said himself that his wife has been doing outreach on the behalf of the investor, meaning, well, I know for a fact the calls have been made because, in principle, I know folks have been called personally, including myself. The point is, though, so the question as to an exclusive broker, which merely seems to be an exclusive broker. I mean, from my history, I've been I've been a real estate broker for maybe probably 30 years, operating in the most intense market in the world, New York City, for over 30 years, and for at least 30 years, a broker, not an agent, which is different. And I've also been a mortgage broker, which write deals, finance deals. So, registered by New York State Banking Department. Now, I know how the business works in terms of proprieties and all the oversights that are involved, and and what will get you in trouble. So there's a specter, of course, and the question is there. Nobody can move away the dark cloud on that one in terms of the left brain and the right brain. I always term it as the left brain and the right brain. The Premier's wife is for the Premier is the Premier, and they're one. And of course, if she's the exclusive broker leading up to the application that was made in July of this year, at his desk, then it does the left brain consults the right brain. I think that's in focus and in review, and there's no point playing games or tiptoeing around the issue. These are issues that are on the people's mind. They speak about it, so you got to be frontal about it. Thank you, Webbo.
Conrad Meyer Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and pleasant good evening to your staff here at the Powerhouse of the Eastern Caribbean, to my colleagues at the Five Field, Mr. Herbert. Good evening, and to all in tune and all by the various means being a part of this wonderful program that sometimes illuminates the mind of people, and sometimes make them think, sometimes bring about a certain implication on those who sometimes speak their mind. I would like to say a special good evening to my friends in the international circle, over there in Connecticut and over there in Toronto, also in Miami. Welcome to this program. And I must say, Webbo, thank you for having me once again. We are actually exiting the month of September, and during the month of September, on the 19th of September, we celebrated 42 years of independence. But somehow, I don't think we had much of a talk about independence this year, and here on Nevis, and even here on the Powerhouse on this program, mainly because of the overshadowing issues surrounding the SSZ. But I've been conversing with a few people on the street, and I think it's still something worthwhile, discussing, looking at our development and the pace of our development, the growth of our economy, looking at Nevis in particular during those 42 years, and where we're at this point, and even probably fantasizing about the once highlighted independence of Nevis, and what has obviously surfaced as impediments, what has surfaced as probably propellers to pursue that goal. And I think in that regard, there's always quite a lot to talk about, as Nevis politics has been centered around being politically independent of St. Kitts. I think certain circumstance has probably come to mind, and in reality, I've made our leaders think otherwise, maybe put it not totally out of their mind, but probably on the back seat of their mind. But I think it is something that we should always look at and see if we are actually moving closer to a functional little island, independent, politically independent of St. Kitts, or have we given up on that and allow ourselves to be consumed by the bigger island, St. Kitts? And so I think it's a conversation we usually have around September, almost every year on this program. And it's always a healthy conversation, around independence time. And sometimes the question may come up, why is it we are not that emotionally involved with the independence of the Federation? And I think that speaks for itself once that question has been asked. So maybe tonight we can trespass on those premises and see what is there to talk about. As I say, possible impediments, and at the same time possible propellers as it relates to our journey to I would say nationhood, or even more independence of St. Kitts. I find that we have, in these days, become even more reliant on St. Kitts. And with a conversation with a profound secessionist the other day, I think I tried to explain to him some of the difficulties we are dealing with. Mainly, really, our ability to raise sufficient finance to run our own affairs here in Nevis, and it was said that better can be done. Maybe as it relates to revenue collection, maybe as it relates to proper spending and less wastage and issues of this sort. It doesn't really hurt to discuss, I suppose. It can only optimize, I suppose, our behavior and be something positive for Nevis. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. I thank you, Webbo.
Let me just, before you gentlemen get into the full discussion, just say a shout out to Ted.
Yes,
I just want you to know that I cannot forget you, and Edric in particular. I'm not, belittling the contribution of everybody else, but Edric is not here, and he was a spiritual fellow, because any of you know he was a pastor too? he was a pastor too. But anyway, so he probably is listening and maybe laughing, because he, contrary to everybody else, now that he has passed on, will tell you he still can hear. So anyway, I would always quote Edric, and Ted is still with us. So Ted, I wanted to know that keep always thinking on you, and we got you. So I just basically wanted to mention that. The other thing I want to mention, I mentioned it this morning for those of you who, also just catch us in the morning, is that I want to encourage people to understand. And when we do our debates and discussion, anything we do, and I'm a part of, we set the rules first. And you don't like the rules, please listen but don't play. Because we're going to apply the rules. Because we want a certain, level of debate. And at the beginning you'll always see me say, respect yourselves and then respect others. And we've been, almost 40 years now, we've been debating real passionately here, but staying within the realm. And I also mentioned this morning that what you find is happening now all across the globe, because it seems as if that we are more comfortable speaking about things that are far away from us and addressing them when they are right on our doorstep. So you find that across the globe, as the violence is ramping up, and I like what those more developed nations do. They do studies, they do investigations, and they do research to find out the causes of things so that perhaps, it doesn't happen again. We like to, maybe nothing is wrong with it, but just go with what our mind tells us it is. And what they're finding out is that this increase in the tone and the rhetoric, right, is leading to a lot of this stuff. And I mentioned many years ago on the same early morning show in particular, I had a campaign and I was encouraging people to don't teach the children to hate. And a certain organization told its followers to curse me. And they did. And then we see what we end up with. Why are you going to do that? Why are you going to read your Bible? There's no passage in there that expressly teach people to hate. Sometimes I read a poem and saying, well, if you don't like somebody or their company, the world is wide. Right? So I'm encouraging folks. I always like a good debate, the issues, and Glenda and I were talking before the show, and we were mentioning how fiercely we can attack an idea that you have or point that you have, that thing is weak, etc., etc. But we don't fall out. So when, you get to the stage that because this guy's opinion is different to yours and you start cussing and stuff like that, you won't be using this vehicle. Glendale, you wanted to say
listen, ideas, we don't own all the ideas. Not one of us own the truth to ideas. And not one of us, God gave us the right to ideas and the path forward. I mean, we ought to listen to each other and don't, even if it can get rancorous or what have you, but it's not personal. It's never personal. We have relationships. Some of us has personal friendships for many, many years. And outside of those personal friendships, some of us are just a part of the human race and part of, a community. And, it may not be as strong as us who've had relationships for decades. But as a part of human community, it is important to debate ideas and see them as being outside of yourself. It's just something that hangs outside of you, and we're debating the merits of the idea, the angles and the idea. Don't take it personally. I don't care what it is, just don't take it personal. And it's a testament to growth, it's a testament to maturity, but it's also, if we can only do that, there'll be less violence in our society and amongst us. It's an elevated way of looking at it, but we all just seek to do that.
I laugh because I had for some reason to send a little text to an individual just to say, please don't say things that is not true about me as it relates to a particular issue. And she texted me back and said, I'm not afraid of you, It makes me laugh because, she's a kind of elder person.
I see.
Not that old, but, senior, my senior. And I wonder why take up arms? I mean, how we get there so fast?
Somehow
it's like she's ready for war. And I wonder why, really, to be quite honest. I didn't reply, but I felt that was a quick move to that kind of state of mind. I don't think I'm known as a violent person here on island and aggressive in that respect. So I was very moved to know that particular individual went straight to, I'm not afraid of you guys.
It's a defense mechanism.
So we're talking about the rhetoric and we're talking about the increased aggressions and so forth, and that came back to my mind. And to be quite honest with you, all I have for the individual is respect. So I couldn't reply. Because any reply might have been some kind of an affront, because sometimes you don't know how to step, where to step, and because people just taking on things very heavily, and their reaction seems to be a type that aggressive that encourages the negative and not the positive. But such is life. We are the world. And we got to be able to deal with that type of stuff. But sometimes I wonder, those who really tend to promote those kind of, if they can really deal with the rough, because many times they can't. But just words alone, can start a whole war. Even though, those who have spoken the word can't fight. So yes, we got to be very mindful. It's a little nice society, It could be, I would think, but we got to give it a chance to evolve. All of us, I think we are too politically sharpened and at times politically drunken too, and I believe that there is still hope for happiness. You know, there's still hope that we can make better of good relations in this little society. Of course, they're going to be rancor, they're going to be, you know, these type of thing. There's a place called jail, courthouse, and all that type of stuff, and they have their functions, I suppose. But I believe that we don't have to always be on the knife edge simply because of an opinion. Once, you know, respect is expressed, because I believe in that to the fullness, you know what I'm saying? And yes.
Yeah, harkening back or stepping back a little bit. Yes, I believe in the battle of ideas. You know, let's put them in the crucible and let's see how they come out. You know, I mean, I'm up for the battle of an idea. The best, you know, the idea, the merits that you bring to that merits whatever that idea is that you bring can only sharpen. You understand outcomes, and not only sharpen outcomes, but for the greater good. The greater good will be achieved for like the greater society and larger society. And none of us should shun from it. None of us should step back. You know, it's not personal. Everyone has an opinion and ought to be respected for those opinions. And as long as those opinions, you know, I mean, is in a quest or search towards the greater good.
If I may chime in here, sometimes, you know, persons are afraid to express their opinion for whatever reason, and I believe that, in agreement with you, Glendale, that you know, opinions should be expressed. No one person knows it all, and sometimes for fear of whatever, you know, and the smaller man, so to speak, you know, for some reason may not want to express his or her opinion because they may not feel as if that their opinion would be valid or looked at, you know, in a favorable light. But sometimes we really need to, you know, to speak up and say what we think, what we feel, and who knows, someone may hear us somewhere, and even we ourselves may not be the one to bring that particular opinion to the fore. Someone might hear us and take it to the fore on our behalf, or maybe even sometimes take it to the fore as their original opinion. But for me personally, if I were to say something and it doesn't fly, and somebody were to take it and bring it to the fore as their personal opinion or their angle, and it is supposed to be a fruit, then I would be happy, because the point is, you know, how I see something, it is now going in that particular direction. So I want to encourage us all to, you know, to speak up, even though we may think that our opinion may not count. It counts. You don't know who is listening and when they are listening. So I would encourage us to speak up. Webbo, Naya spoke earlier about independence and independence discussion. I don't know if I'm going too far, if you're going to take the lead on this one. But what I found in recent times, you know, a number of persons, especially those who are older than I am, I would have heard this discussion about back then the green paper. I must confess I'm not very familiar with it, but what I understand from it is that a green paper was prepared and was supposed to taken to England, and in that green paper, amongst other things, you know, I'm bringing it to the fore so persons the two panelists here are older than I am, and they might be able to bring some clarity and shed some more light on it, and persons who are listening. Well, but that's hence the reason why I'm bringing it. As I say, I would have heard of it. Persons would have spoke to me about it. But the green paper, I understand, you know, basically laid out a government for Nevis, a government for St. Kitts, or an administration for St. Kitts, administration for Nevis, and a central government, so to speak, for St. Kitts Nevis. And some persons thought that might not have been the best idea. Others, you know, think that, you know, it might have bring more harmony between St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of, a governmental structure, how it is laid out, in terms of persons, who are representing or being represented on the federal level or the central government level, in terms of the composition, how many from St. Kitts, how many from Nevis, and so on and so forth, and who could become prime minister. Yes, I know that anyone within St. Kitts and Nevis could become prime minister, but maybe that is more theoretical than practical. And we know why, I know why I said that. When you look at the composition as it is now, the structure that it is now, in St. Kitts there are 8 seats. We have a 11-seat parliament, and if there's 11-seat parliament, it simply means that 6 seats can form a government. Any party with 6 seats, or combination of 6 seats, could form a government. And on Nevis with 3 seats, we cannot, no party on Nevis can form the government, whereas any party feeling 6 or more candidates on St. Kitts could form a government. Hence the reason why I said that, and I thought that I should just explain for some persons who may not know. So I don't know what my fellow panelists, how they feel about it, if they want to chime in on that. They're older than I am, they might have a better understanding, they might have even read the paper.
Well, Roger, the Green Paper, I think, was introduced by Limo back prior to independence. I think it was around that time. And it was a document. First, Labour wanted to go into independence, had they win the election. They had campaigned to do that, to go into independence. I think it's 79 going into 1980. And Limo had introduced the Green Paper as the way forward once we become an independent nation. The Green Paper denoted was that Nevis would have its NIA and St. Kitts would have its, its government and all that sort of thing, if I can remember it clearly. But Labour did not get the chance to go and take the country into independence because they were usurped in the 1979-80 election with the PAM NRP coalition. 4 seats in St. Kitts and 2 in Nevis, I think it was, something to that effect. And formed the government in 1983. The newly formed coalition government went into independence, and Labour has never gone back. I mean, with Limo went on, and of course, left the Labour, not left but died, and the new leader, Denzel Douglas, never took up the mantle. They spoke of it along the way, but never really implemented or did anything in a concretized way in terms of making it a reality, which would have led to constitutional reform. And for many years out, for the last 42 years, it's been laid at abeyance, or whatever you want to call it, to sit there and, for example, you would reflect on it today. But the vexing question from a Nevis standpoint, and of course, I would say from a St. Kitts standpoint, is the inequities that exist between St. Kitts and Nevis. And I think the Green Paper would speak towards those inequities and having a lot of that stuff go away. In terms of currently the federal government happens to be the government of St. Kitts, the local government of St. Kitts. And they have access, who sits there and who at the seat of power in the executive has access to all the resources. And therefore, they have to answer to their constituents, because their constituents who are the people who vote for them in their constituencies, which is mainly in the mainland in St. Kitts. So the incongruence it breeds from that. I mean, because people can service the constituencies which they come from, for the most part. And we as a minority, in terms of having leverage in the federal house, in the executive rather, in any government form, unless we have some leverage over the sitting government, meaning that we have a presence in the executive. We are like bystanders, of events that continue to go on for the last 42 years in our country.
Gentlemen, might I ask this question? If you were looking at it 40 plus years on, 42 years on, and thinking that you probably need some sort of changes because there seems to be some vexing issues and stuff like that, and it don't seem anyone ever considered the way we operate? Two things I want to mention. Number one, in the British Virgin Islands recently, there was a recommendation that the Premier has a maximum of 2 consecutive terms. And I think it was roundly rejected. But by who? The parliamentarians. So the question for that is whether or not, with stuff like those, should you continue to allow those persons, the parliamentarians, the politicians, who it will affect mostly, should they be the ones to decide it?
Frankly, I don't
And
think...
that's number one. No, I'm going to put the two issues, and then you can, And then the second one is whether or not, and following off the same line of thinking, there ought not to be certain issues that before the said elected and maybe non-elected parliamentarians take a decision on it, should there not be certain issues that they should come back to the people, rather than they always saying that people voted for us to represent them, and so therefore this is what we're going to do. So just a thought. Go ahead.
I think you're onto something, Webbo. I think that's any issue that I think that affects affects the Constitution, or any issue that is going to be implemented, or that affects the landscape, meaning transformational. That would be transformation, ought to be a ballot issue. There ought to be a referendum ballot issue. And that is how democracy works best. Such as I would even say, the big issue on the table, which is the SSZ in this country. It's a major issue that it can be transformational. Like I said, it's a watershed moment. These are issues has to be a ballot issue that goes through a referendum before you go to Parliament. The question must be asked of the people. And I think it's highly arrogant and highly self-appointive of individuals of varying experience, and some of them are short of experience in life, to make these grand decisions, these great decisions that would affect thousands of people down the road and our history. And I think a referendum always forces the people to question, not only question but do research, and in terms of how wherever the preponderance of basically the inclination is in terms of how they would vote, or how they would address the ballot. So I think it's always in democracies, first world democracies, referendum issue. These are issues that go before the people before they go to Parliament. They become referendum issues.
Yes. We always say that we are a side shoot or something to that effect of the Westminster constitutional form of government, and I think we sometimes overstate that, really, in a sense, because if you read into law and the struggles between the parliament and the monarchy, you would realize the parliament didn't have the power it have today when the monarchy was mostly running things, really, and of course there was a major struggle, but parliament developed that power partly through what they refer to as the Adjudicator Act of 1875 over there in Great Britain. They become the main makers of laws, and we are of course remnants of that tradition, the sovereignty of Parliament, and but only that it seems like Parliament down here is even more sovereign than the one in England, because to me it seems to be that the Parliament in England and the government in England are always quick to go to a referendum. They're always quick to involve the people. They're always quick to go to that referendum. I mean, in the whole of UK.
And it protects the politician.
Yes,
And that's basically what he does.
And I always say that in various ways, you know, the Constitution is held by certain strings, you know, and sometimes I think those customs doesn't exist here. You know what I mean? We talk about the royal prerogatives. We talk about things like ministerial responsibilities. You know, we are talking about conventions, and these are things that are truly non-legal by nature, but they carry such power within the Constitution and the way the Constitution works, the way Parliament work. You know, so they tend to keep things on the right track. That aspect of what can I say, constitutional law or the makeup of the Constitution is not really in place down here. So what we have here is a Parliament who sometimes take it upon themselves to be absolutely sovereign in terms of making decisions. And I think I said that in the last sittings we had here last week. You know, there was that system of government that we call utilitarianism, where a few people decides for the population. You know, but now we are dealing with democracy, where the people decides what is best for the people, and so we are dealing with something a little different than what we always talk about, the Westminster Constitution. You know, like the parliamentarians is going to go into Parliament and they're going to make a law about their pension, and you serve 2 terms and then, oh, that's it, you get all the pension in the world. And so after 2 terms, some of them don't care no more to even serve the people or even to enter into politics and so forth. You know, I think they fat up themselves too much. You know what I mean? Without really consultation with the public. You hear government through representation, through consultation. We, I think, need to see a lot more of that around here, you know. But it's like, go ahead.
You know, when you do that, what you tend to do as a politician who goes in the house and up high, act as some overlord on society. You know, making these far-reaching decisions that, to me, that are tectonic in nature. Meaning, you know, I mean, shifting the entire, you know, flow from under you, the ground under you, and you know, it detaches the people away from their democracy. And that is where you get apathy, you know, in terms of voter apathy. It starts seeping in. The arrogance of man, you know, and a lot of times people are making decisions in areas in which they're not really, really well versed in. And, you know, for short-sighted reasons. You know, myopic reasons, I call them. And again, you always have to keep the people in mind, and the people, ballot initiatives are very important in democracy, is to bring people along with decisions.
Glendale, sometimes how I look at it is maybe a little more challenging. I understand what you are saying, but sometimes a little more challenging in that how the Constitution, to change any major portion of the Constitution, you'll probably have to first get 2/3, the majority of parliamentarian, and then probably take it to a referendum. I can recall some years ago, probably late 90s, when I think CCM might have been in power, and the talk of secession came up, and they had to basically lobby, in my opinion, with the opposition at the time, to come on board, vote for it before it could be taken to the public for a referendum. Now, I am saying all of this to say, you know, probably the same thing with the constitutional reform. You know, so the Constitution is what it is. So maybe what needs to happen sometimes is, you know, civic-minded persons, you know, they have outreach programs, and let the the public opinion. I think if the public were to cry out on whatever issue, and the masses cry out, I want to believe that our elected leaders will have no other what's the word? I'm looking for the word. But they would just have to listen. They would have to listen. Maybe sometimes to our leaders here in St. Kitts Nevis and possibly in the Caribbean, they feel as if, and yes, they are elected by the masses to make certain decisions on behalf of the masses. But I want to believe sometimes they probably feel as if, hey, I would probably look maybe a little weak if I were to go back to the public on certain matters. So these are things that we would see, we would debate about, and what is right, what is wrong, and I think that it could only make healthy the discussion. What should happen, what would happen, what the public is thinking. In the BVI, just recently, as Webbo indicated, that was basically turned down. Different reasons were set about. We are a small island, a small country. How many of us, would be involved in politics if we were to have a two-term? We are not big as the United States and other countries. But maybe what need to happen, maybe we need to change our politics, and maybe we need to get back on track and start to discuss more of the issues instead of attacking and discussing, personalities and individuals. And if we were to do that, maybe more persons might become more interested in elective politics. I know I would have heard some persons say, who, me? Not me. And when they lambaste me and them tell me, I wouldn't know about me, I wouldn't know about me. I mean, so persons may want to put their foot forward, but for some reason they're fearful of what might be said of them, and maybe even of maybe the past, whether it was good or bad. But we have to understand as a people that it takes us to lead our country. It takes us to lead our island. We cannot rely on other persons from far land to come to lead us.
Who leading it now, Roger?
Well, we are leading Nivisions, Kittitians. But I'm just saying, Webbo, if we were just to sit aside and say that we're not going to take part because of fear, then what would happen in time to come?
Fear of who and fear of what?
Fear of what might be said or could be said of us. If we were to, wet our feet in the political arena, so to speak. And as I said, I would have
By
heard
who?
By those who probably love to criticize. And as I said...
Meaning those amongst us?
Yes, those amongst us.
So in other words, it's fair to conclude we should not fear ourselves?
No, we should know ourselves.
No, but the fear part, because remember that's what you emphasize, that is the hindrance, right?
In most cases,
and
in some cases.
Right, and you said the fear of being criticized by those amongst us.
Yes.
Which means by ourselves.
Basically.
Because remember you also said that we have to lead our nation.
Yes.
Okay.
That's interesting in a sense that it's not a real bad thing. To me, it's not really. It's a little society we have, and we are more on a tightrope here than maybe a huge society, in terms of who you are or what you have done before. Last week, we speak to this thing called integrity in public life. A lot of that is not really written in the legislation, right? But it's it's to me, in this small society, we are very much looked at. You know, what you have done in the past, and it's probably have nothing to do with money. You know, for instance, just a good example, a man who seems to be what we refer to a womanizer. He probably has his wife and he's a womanizer. And he tried to get into public life. That in itself might be something he has to deal with, you know, because of public observation of how he functions, you know, in his personal life, you know what I mean? So I'm asking, is that a really bad thing? You know, because you speak about fear, what people is going to say about us, you know? But when there is nothing to say about you, then you should have no fear, you know? I mean, there could be things that are made up and true against you, but not everything's going to stick, because the truth is, if you are a decent person, decent enough to approach the public, and every public is slightly different, you know what I mean? You hear about Donald Trump and all the things he's been doing with extra people and pay $120,000 to prostitutes and all that. He was able to become the president still, you know. That might be looked at differently in a different society, you know what I mean? But the point I'm making is that, the question I'm asking is it always a bad thing that we got to consider what the people think about the life we have lived when we are thinking about public life?
Well, this is the whole thing, Naya. You know, we should know ourselves. Each individual should know him or herself. And I often say to persons, you know, nobody know you better than you, and you should not allow anyone to define you. People would say things, whether negative or positive, about you for whatever reason, whether they want to be aligned with you or whether they want to malign you. You know, people would make up things, you know, but you should know yourself. You should want to do what you want to do, whether you want to become a banker, whether you want to become a police, whether you want to become a politician, whether you want to become a farmer. It's you, what you want to do. You must be strong-minded, because if you are not strong-minded, then you will be easily be deterred and swayed.
Yeah, but you know, sorry, but you know, certain professions requires you to be of a certain behavior.
Of course.
Okay, so that in itself could be an impediment to what you want to be, your own personal behavior.
And right, so now that takes me now, Naya, what are we doing in terms of in the school system? In the school system, you know, you are taught, you know, certain principles, whether along the lines of science. So later on in life, you could become a doctor, you could become a scientist, you could become an accountant. But the question is, are we teaching in school politics so one could go along that path?
Roger, excuse me for a minute. How do you teach people politics in school? Politics is a creative thing as you go along. You make it up as you go along.
Well, you don't know.
And it's not. It's not policy we're talking. It's two different things. Politics is an ever-evolving thing. I mean, you know, last campaign you ran, you know, you might have used this strategy. Next campaign, you invent a new strategy. On and on and on. And you know, that's basically politics. Is whatever works. It's just an argument that is basically an argument that you're advancing, and whatever you choose or whatever. But whatever. Subjective means you use to your end. That's politics. Now, policy is a different game. I mean, you know, development of policy can come through yes, of course, institutions like schools and what have you. They can give you a guideline as to how you can develop policy, whether it's fiscal policy or whatever the case is. But politics cannot be thought in that sense. It's, you know, I don't know, it's a sort of in the ear sort of thing, amorphous sort of, you know, concept. You can't really, you know, teach a person politics. Either you're good at it, convincing people, or you're not. You know.
So how do you teach one another subject? Now, and my question, that might be part A, part B. do they have something named political science that people study?
Yeah, but that's not
How much of a difference?
They just teach, what they're basically doing is to teach you, okay, fine, the history of politics, really. Political science is an inexact science. It's inexact. It's not physics. It's not math. It's not you understand? It's a different thing where you can exact things. Politics is like teaching someone to be a sociologist, a psychologist. It's total inexact.
So are you saying that that should not happen?
It's not a matter of should or should not. It's what can be practical in terms of what you're asking for somebody to teach the country or teach young people how to behave. It just don't work that way. You know, I mean, it's like it's like every economist, and economics is inexact science. You can have 2 or 3, 4 economists around this table, and each one has a different way, an angle as to how to get to it. It's not like physics where you have the Newton laws and mass equal force equal mass times, whatever, acceleration. And that's a fact. You can't refute it mathematically. It's something everybody approach, have a subjective approach. There's no set paradigm in place in the inexact science.
But I believe though, I hear in you. But I believe that there is something that could spark the interest. Meaning, I recall, going to school at the primary school level, we then had to know the prime minister, the premier, the ministers of government, and their portfolios and stuff like that, and not just for St. Kitts Nevis, but for other countries. Now, I just jokingly asked a youngster about a month or 2 ago, who is the minister of, X, Y, and they really couldn't say, and so I'm saying, we have to spark the interest and create the interest at some point in time. You may not look at it as an interest, but if you learn about our leaders, maybe instead of learning about maybe Columbus, we learn about Llewellyn Bratcher. We learn about Paul Southwell. We learn about France. We learn about Michael J. Powell. We learn about Kennedy Simmons, Sim Daniel, Vance. Somebody may say, well, I probably want to become like that person. We learn about Concy Mitchum, the first elected female in the Federation. Some female may say, well, I want to be a female, elected female too.
But I thought you were focusing on decorum, and you cannot teach. You really can't teach decorum. I mean, decorum is an ever evolving thing. It's based on what's happening in the social mix at the time. Young kids are different from how we were. Me and Naya and Webbo coming through. I mean, the young kids, we're totally disconnected in terms of how we approach life. It's based on what's happening socially. Decorum, you can't, it's not something you can, an exact science. Well, okay, teach decorum, and then you're going to behave like X, Y, Z in this event, and X and B, C, D in that different event. It don't work like that. It's an ever-evolving thing.
I understand, but when we look at it a different way, there's bad and there's good. We want to teach our children the good. You know something? I might be going off on a tangent here, but when you really look at life, there's bad and there's good. Really? However, we perceive them. Now, I can't ever recall had to tell anyone that or teach anyone to do bad. But we have to constantly teaching them how to do good or to move or to go on the path of good. You may not agree with that, but do you have to teach a child to steal, so to speak? Do you have to teach a child to swear? You'll be surprised a child coming up and then probably hear someone swearing and they start to swear. They hear someone speaking something good and they don't speak what they hear in terms of that. But you have to constantly speak in good for them, hopefully to go on the straight and narrow way, which is the good path, so to speak. So this is what I'm saying. We have to create that spark, and we have to continuously, create that spark for persons to go along a particular a particular way. Now, when we look at it at a different angle, we look at it reality now. We look at Nevis. Let's look at Nevis. Look at our health care system. Over the years, we grew up knowing probably all of the nurses that work at Alexandria Hospital. Now, the question is, do you know all the nurses who work at Alexandria Hospital? Now, we have been crying out for a shortage of nurses, local nurses, that is. So what I'm saying, we have to continue, to probably do things to sensitize, the populace, that, hey, it is important to probably take up a particular career path. We probably have to give incentives to. I don't know if
you're losing me, man. You can, anyway.
and you see, and you see, and this is what I'm saying. Sometimes we go along a straight path, and it is easy to follow. Another time we may take the route and we may go up.
Gentlemen, let me take this. I'll come back to you, Roger. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, good evening, Webbo.
Hello. You want to turn the apparatus you're listening to off or down and listen to the telephone? You're going to hear us.
Yeah, it's down.
That's better. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what trying to learn something what has been said here, but I'm losing what Roger is saying. I mean, I don't know what's going on tonight.
In other words, he is what education doing?
Disconnect.
He's disconnecting.
Yeah, I'm disconnected. I don't understand what the topic is tonight.
Roger, reconnect him.
Thank you. I would love you to reconnect me. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks, Carla. You probably have to pay bill. That's a light moment, Carla. Yes, Carla, and this is what I'm saying. I was just trying to bring out my earlier point that we need, this generation and generations to come. We need to try to mold them and bring them along a certain pathway, in order to spark their interest, and maybe we are sporting community. So maybe if I use a sporting analogy, maybe we might, get back some connection,
Okay, why don't we do that? Okay, use it and do it quickly. I have someone else holding.
Yes.
Wait, work with me. Caller, please hold. Okay, Roger, go ahead.
Yes, this is what I'm saying. If we want more cricketers, then we probably need to have more coaches, cricketing coaches, and probably more pitches, for persons, to get interested in cricket, to play cricket.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, all.
Good evening.
Coincidentally, the first item raised concerning the political temperature and the anger that it breeds was also discussed on another radio station today. And the viewers expressed that we are all too inclined to bash. I asked for a definition of bashing, and the one preferred was personal attack, essentially. Nothing's wrong with that, I don't think. The question then becomes, though, what do we regard as personal attack? Was the issue raised so tactfully by someone on the panel that I was listening to about the propriety on the land transaction by the Premier's wife? Was that a personal attack, or was it fair game? I think that really that issue can be left up to the people generally, who I think can think for themselves and reason and decide whether or not it passes the smell test. Although, I mean, I'm reminded of last election when a particularly rabid supporter declared, if my prime minister is wrong, he's right. And if he's right, he's double right. I mean, you can't debate that kind of dogma. That goes beyond loyalty, right? There's another less complimentary word that I could use to describe it. The thing is, though, that all are responsible for the how nasty our politics have become, how uncivil it has become. Okay? And so all of us, I think, bear a responsibility to cool down the temperature. But I will always say that those in authority, the onus is on those in authority to take the first step, okay, to set the tone for the rest of the nation. Because we all know when you're in opposition, you see everything that's wrong. But yet, when you go into government and can effect changes, you don't do it, you know. And so it behoves all of us, I think, to remember the words of Mahatma Gandhi, right? Politics without principle is one of, I think, it's 7 deadly sins, okay? And we can have 100 different opinions, yes, okay? But clearly, there are some standards that we can all accept. And certainly, like I said, to do things without principle and call it politics is not leading us to a good road. That's my take on the whole thing.
Okay, before you leave that, might I engage you on that?
Sure.
Are you aware, or would you agree with the view that a lot of things that people put under the heading of politics have nothing to do with politics?
That's true.
Okay. Let me go around the... Thank you, caller.
Yeah.
Let me go around the table and ask the same question and hear what we get. Fifield.
Yes, Webbo. A lot of things that we deem to be politics is really not politics.
A lot of things that we put under the heading of politics have nothing to do with politics. That was the moot. You agree with that?
Yes, I'm in agreement.
The Glendale.
I'm not sure if I agree with that, Webbo.
Okay, so everything...
I'm not sure about
okay. Naya, what do you think?
I agree with that, Webbo.
Okay, so let's go back to Glendale.
Oh, yeah.
So that everything that you ever discussed, witnessed, or heard under the heading of politics had everything to do with politics? Don't tell me I disconnected you.
No, you didn't disconnect me.
Oh, okay.
No, the reason I'm
You're
saying that,
thinking,
Webbo, I mean, listen, I don't think any one of us have ever seen this era of politics in the United States with the advent of Trump.
Walk with me.
He brought a new politics.
Walk with
So
me.
it's always inventive. So that is why I wasn't too sure.
But don't do like what I used to do sometimes. Sometimes things are so simple. And I can't believe it could be so simple. So I overthink and make it difficult. The question is simple. A lot of the things that people put under the heading of politics has nothing to do with politics.
So true.
Different people have different rate of sometimes solving certain things. So let me use an example to get you closer. A lot of people have deep jealousy and envy against other people, and they put it under the heading of politics.
Got you. Can you connect me?
So now I did. Okay,
Let's move on.
Okay, good. So I'm a good communicator. Let's go back to let's go back to Roger when I interrupted you. You lost your train of thought.
Yeah, Webbo.
By the way, I learned, Roger, that you have a very, you know, a lot of people have number one fans. But I understand you have a very ardent number one fan. One of these days you'll find out who she is.
And she. A light moment is necessary now and then. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, Webbo, back to where I was, Webbo. You know, there are certain things you really cannot teach, but there are certain things that you can spark an interest. And that is what I was really saying. We need to spark interest in persons. So if we are a small nation, as the BVI would have said, that they are too small, and that talk would have come up here in St. Kitts Nevis too. And basically, same thing was saying that, we are too small to have term limits. Now, that is arguable. Now, what I'm saying, if we feel, like, if some of us feel that way, and others of us don't feel that way, then I am saying, why don't we try to equip, the youngsters coming up? We may not be able to teach it, but we may be able to teach certain things that can generate the interest. I don't know if I'm connecting you now, Glendale. The interest must be there.
Yeah, but you can, again, I keep saying, Roger, everybody has an original where they want to be. They have okay, you and I, and Naya and Webbo, we all have different prints on our fingers, on our hands. Mm-hmm. We all come from a different space. Mm-hmm. Maybe how we're born, our genetics are different. We have different interests coming out. Mm-hmm. You can guide people and say you want more cricketers and have people be interested, more people interested in cricket. When there's so many influences that are out there and so many things that takes people in different direction. When I was growing up, and I can say invariably every one of us was growing up, all we knew for the most part, and I did say the Premier said today too in his press conference, most people all we knew was becoming a lawyer, a doctor, and whatever. As in terms of professionals, mm-hmm. outside of a policeman mm-hmm. and outside of working in the civil service. And there's so thousands of areas and fields you can go into that makes tremendously more money. And those lawyers and doctors, people are not open. People are not, they don't know. And areas where you can monetize, you can monetize any skill. Mm-hmm. Now you have a skill of welding, you may have a passion for it from a young youth, early youth. That's in you, inbred. You have no passion in cricket. They can't force that on you. But you can monetize what your passion is. And what I'm trying to say too, so we must encourage expressiveness in young people. Let them express themselves in whatever way, because that could be the next, the next big thing. And I mean, that is what's done in America, in the great United States. It's a country of innovation and a country that encourages innovation. It doesn't focus on dotting the I's and crossing the T's and spelling the word therefore versus however. And then if you cannot spell however, you drop the W in however. Oh, you dunce. And they shame you. This is society we came from. They teach you there how to think originally. You see what I'm saying? And the idea, once you can think, monetize that thing, figuring ways how to get that to market. That is what we need when you're building a country. My point is, yes, you can hold people and say, well, all of you going to go this way and all of you going to go this way. Listen, human beings are what they are. They must be free-spirited and free thinkers.
Glendale,
and you must encourage that.
Glendale, it may sound funny if I say I agree with you, But what is happening... You would have mentioned something that really, sparks something here. Persons go in different way. Persons find their niche, so to speak. But how they do. Now, let us look at, I want to become a movie star. But I may not see the avenue for me to become a movie star. Now, I'm just going to use this because this happened. MSI was here some time ago. And it gave persons now who might have been interested and didn't see an avenue, to go and maybe sign up, maybe to be an extra or to get even a minor role. And from that minor role, that person could become the next big thing from Neves in terms of a movie star. What I'm saying, we have to create the atmosphere. And that is what that goes right back to the politics. We have to create that atmosphere. We have to create that pitch. We can't want cricketers, for example, or basketballers and don't have the cricketing court. We can't have netballers and don't have the rings and stuff like that. We can't have accountants and not teach it in school. And I am not saying to push persons one dimension. You know, we have to have a broad and wider. And if we do that, we are broadening the scope.
Yeah, but your original argument was regarding the politics, and that's, I think, that's what we're really honing on. And I'm merely trying to say to you, you can't teach people how to behave. You know, as long as, at the same time, it's like holding fire and water in one hand, and at the same time, you want people to be expressive. You understand? If you're going to want people to be expressive of their original thought, of course, you can't teach people how to get to a particular point. They may not choose a path. You choose in terms of how to do it, in terms of teaching people decorum. I mean, that's the old way, but that's not how kids are exposed to it. That's not how, you know, and they're looking at first of all because they're exposed to first of all television. They're exposed to first of all marketing. They're exposed to first of all what is social media. We can't take that away. You see, and these kids know so much. You understand? What we need to do is ignite and encourage that natural whatever they have, inclination that they have, and hopefully that can be monetized and transferred into, you understand, into something that's for the greater good that society will benefit from. And that's basically where it's at. But to say your original thought was politics, and I just don't see how you teach people in the school to be, political science don't teach you that. It teaches you political theories. That's basically where the focus is on. It doesn't teach you the common how I behave on a platform or how I don't choose not to. You understand? And the antics I carry on with, the way I choose to run. It's always pushing the envelope. Politics is pushing the envelope and what you get away with. It's about winning and losing.
Do we have a shortage of politicians?
No.
No. I'm not saying we have a shortage of politicians now. My argument was based on the 2 terms limit. And persons are saying that we are too small to have 2 terms limit because the field of politicians or persons going to the political field may not be as, the pool may not be as wide.
Okay, so what do you think about that? You think are we too small? You think that the interest is not that forthcoming in politics? I mean, to be honest, that's quite debatable whether our size is a contributing factor to not have or to have
this size
a time limit.
This size may not be the definite factor. The interest, in my opinion, may be more of a factor than the size. For instance,
so are you saying that there should be more interest, or you would like to stimulate more interest in becoming a politician?
Who wants to be a I'm sorry about that. Who wants to be a politician, Raja?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Do you understand? The question I just asked was, do you think we should try to stimulate more interest in becoming a politician?
Well, this is exactly what I'm saying now. If the thought process is that 2 terms is not workable because of the size equate to the number of persons within the society, and not necessarily the landmass. So what I'm saying, if we are speaking of persons and we are saying because of the size, then I am saying that if that is the case and we want to reroute from that case, then I'm saying get more persons involved. How we get more persons involved? And that is the question, and that is the crux. That is why I said I spoke to the school system.
Why is size and negativity in term limits?
But I don't know. That's why. That's what I'm asking. You know,
well, ask him.
No.
Well, that's what I am
Webbo,
asking.
Webbo, I'm not saying size is or size isn't.
Okay.
What I'm saying, based on what came out of the BVI and what was said some time ago, right here in St. Kitts Nevis, I was just
By
using
who? Remember, the people who voted in that issue were the people who were affected by it directly.
Yes,
The
sir.
parliamentarians or the politicians, right? Remember that the health insurance and all these perks and everything and so on that they get were voted for
By them.
And so when simple ordinary people can't get certain things and stuff like that and so on,
Yeah.
they get it. So if you want to be real transformative, what if you were to tie it to ours as well? Maybe we'll get a better deal.
Or a referendum on whether or not they should get to.
Right. So that is what I was saying. So that once they don't have all the cards,
Yes.
I'm asking if you think we will get better results. Because what happens, in some of the systems like right now, you could talk as much as you want. They could say, well, I hear you, everything and stuff like that, and then they go and they do what they want.
I mean,
Am I not?
Correct?
Yeah.
You are correct.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yes, I do agree that there's no way to train a politician. I mean, you can teach political science, and you can, as was said, teach political theory. Also, the history of politics would probably be a helpful subject in any political science course. But I don't think you can actually teach people to be a politician. Because remember, we often just call them politicians, when in fact, what we need, what we really want, are leaders. And there are certain qualities in leadership that there are some qualities that we can teach. You can teach somebody to be competent in administration and management and those kinds of things. But you can't teach the more esoteric things like vision or how to galvanize the populace, how to motivate a whole population. That, I think, comes from an art. I mean, you either have it or you don't. And the problem is, this is where size comes in, I think. The less population you have, the less likely are you to find somebody exceptional, somebody visionary. Okay? Because, face it, let's face it. Look at how difficult it is we have getting new politicians here, renewal in our politics. Lots of old people who shouldn't be there are in politics, right? And also, the young ones, unfortunately, seem to take the cue from the older ones. They essentially define what politics is about. And so we don't have the kind of renewal that we need. Okay? And so I'm saying, but in the final analysis, since there are no exceptional politicians these days, okay, that we can point to. We can, I don't want to call it a risk, but we certainly can experiment with new people.
Carter,
that's the important thing.
For the benefit of myself, could you repeat that statement you just made?
About what? Which one?
Since there are no exceptional
politicians around.
Oh, really?
So let me hear who is exceptional.
No, I don't know. I am just listening. So I just wanted to make sure I heard what you said.
Okay, yeah. There aren't any.
There aren't any. Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so the question I wanted to ask you coming out of what you were saying, you were talking about being able to become a politician and stuff like that. So the question I want to ask you, for a man to be qualified as a cricketer, you would agree you first have to know what a cricketer is?
Right.
Okay. So, do we know what are the qualifications or the characteristics you have to be a politician?
We know some, yes.
Okay.
We certainly expect something like honesty, integrity. I mean,
Okay,
yes,
well, maybe this is a light moment.
Huh?
Maybe this is a light moment, but I can help you with that. You like me to help you?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want you to listen to me tomorrow morning about 7:35,
Right.
and then we'll do some research and help you, okay?
Oh, you're coming with something to answer that question?
Yes, sir.
Age-old question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So about 7:35.
Okay.
Okay.
I hope you're not bringing back down Jesus Christ.
Oh no.
Okay. All right, then.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure, but I guess you guys know the song, The Qualification of a Politician. You know that
It's
song.
a calypso.
It's a
So,
calypso.
you know.
And it's well written. And you can say that's not true.
Who can say it's not true?
Well, because of the lyrics of the song is absolutely true.
You say it's well written and it's
No.
well read, right?
No. I'm just asking because we had this discussion in calypso back in the late 80s, 90s. There, for some reason, a lot of calypsonians in Nevis were singing about secession, and I always say if you have persons on the judging panel who are deemed competent judges, but you may have a good song, well written, quote unquote, about secession, seceding from St. Kitts, but a judge or two on the panel may differ and do not want to see secession. So how that judge is going to mark the song, although it might quote unquote be well written?
But there's a criteria, Roger. When you judge, there's a criteria that you give. That's given. Give me a second. That's given to you. It says X amount of points to this, X amount of points to lyrics, X amount how the lyrics marry with the music, all that sort of thing. And
I always wanted to ask this question, Glendale and Naya Roger in particular, right? Naya probably will have some, view on it as well. As you're talking about this particular thing, do you have any knowledge as to whether or not in the judging competitions, whether or not we have had any occasions whereby a person will judge a semi-final and also judge in the finals?
Yes.
Did we have those occasions?
That has happened.
That has happened.
Yes.
Do we know whether or not it has ever occurred whereby, let's say you are a judge, Roger, and Melissa is singing. So you judge in the semi-finals and you scored her, let's say, 80 points. Or let's say 60. But note the number I'm going to use because it's very important. So in the semi-finals you score 60, but in the finals, or let me put it the other way around, in the semi-finals you score 80, but whatever it is, competition night, you score 60. You ever know of anything like that happening?
Well, I mean, I want to...
I know it's two different performances,
Yes.
so keep that in mind.
Yes.
So you ever know anything like that happening?
Well, in the past, you would have had, in the semi-finals, for example, a Calypsonian, would have placed first or second in the semi-finals, and then on the final night, they don't place. Now, the question is, how the panel of judges see that particular performance? I mean, maybe Glendale could speak more to that.
No, I'm talking about a judge.
In George.
One,
yeah,
not the panel, because the panel will take it outside the range that I'm going. The panel will bring in 3 or 4 or 5 judges, where this score can be, this judge's score can. So I'm talking about a specific judge. Glendale, you've been a judge before. You ever have a situation where, for whatever reason, Roger got 80 from you, semi-finals night, and then could only muster 60 on finals night?
It's possible,
Why? How?
The song, he didn't put over the song well on the final night.
It didn't put it
Right,
over
maybe,
well.
yeah. Number of things could happen in the judging criteria. The rendition, music, a compliment, but probably was not as tight as it was in the semi-final. He sing off key. I got off. He forget, a lyric here or there. Many things can
A
happen.
lyric here or there?
Yeah, I mean, he forget his words. So
Okay,
whatever.
so walk with me. You're going right to where I want to zero in on. Do the lyrics change normally between semi-finals night and competition night?
Yeah.
They hardly change.
No, listen to this. Listen. You know, they do the extra verse, right?
No, I said hardly. Let's say they don't do that.
Okay, then they don't change.
They don't change. So why is the score different?
Subjectivity, my friend,
In the judging?
in the judging.
But it's not supposed to
It's
be.
not supposed to be.
Because
But
you
the
have...
human condition comes through.
Okay. So the truth is that all this long heap of explanation and 15 pages of breaking down the judge's decision, the reality is it makes no sense in that regard. Huh?
Correct.
I need some more opposition when I'm bringing these points because these status quo and things that keep happening all the time, right? Not some of the reasons why we end up in so much controversy and confusion.
And again, Webbo, I go back to let me go back to an earlier point. Inexact science, you cannot nail it down. The human mind and the human condition and whatever influence in people forces people to behave how they behave.
And then what happened in this case? No, you want to have, forums, you want to have, sessions for judges, not to teach the judge, so to speak, to judge, but to have some consistency and to have even more persons getting interested. Because if you don't have these sessions, then persons may not be exposed. Maybe one would want to become a judge, but you would not pick Roger Fifield to be a judge when he have never judged anything. But if there are no forums, there are no training sessions, and Roger Fifield goes to the training session, then maybe Roger Fifield could be selected. And this is what I'm saying.
I mean, they've had those in the past, some training sessions.
I am even speaking broader.
Okay.
You must have the groundwork to sensitize persons, and stuff like that for persons to get the interest. The interest may be there, but you probably need to enhance it. I may have one may have an interest, maybe to speak publicly, for example. But if they don't have, if no groundwork is laid in terms of to get that person to where he wants to be, then what happens? I disconnect you.
Well, how do you? I don't know. I mean, they're just to speak. How do you teach somebody to speak publicly? I'm asking the question.
How do you speak one to sing? How do you train one to sing?
You're natural. The only thing you can do, basically, I think, you can learn some skills outside of your natural ability, whether you're breathing, for example, breathing, speaking publicly.
Same thing.
First of all, you have to combat fear and overcome your fear for starters. And then the only thing I could think of in terms of, your cadence, developing your cadence, I guess. And when you speak and you speak, I guess you speak more from your chest. Those are things you'd learn. But, it's either you have the inclination or you don't. And the rest comes after that. If you're a good singer, you can only tap around out those things, the quality of those things, with some training here and there. But you have to have the tools to start with, the innate tools to start with, whether it's public speaking or whether it's, singing or whatever, anything to do with the art, and it's an art form, it's innate. Anything is an art form you have and a skill you hone, but you just have the basics, the grade, you're good at it already, for the most part.
You think that politics is an art?
Of course it is.
So you would have just answered my question from
so how do you teach? I'm saying, how do you teach it? You keep saying, but teaching it, and I just don't see how you do that.
No, what I'm saying, to spark the interest. You learn about Vivian Richards. You want to be like Vivian Richards. You learn about Sparrow. You want to be like Sparrow. You can't.
You can't teach those things.
I know, but what I'm saying, you spark the interest.
How do you do that? I'm asking the question.
By teaching the subject matter.
Okay, hold on. Take it slowly.
Let me rephrase.
What part of the subject matter to be like Sparrow you can be? You're going to teach.
Can I get the opportunity to rephrase? Can I get the opportunity to rephrase? What I'm saying, I did say to teach the subject matter, but you probably want to maybe look at him in this way, where he came from, what he has achieved, and many of us, come from humble beginnings, and we would see someone that we probably look up to and say, if that person could come from this particular area or aspect of life, I can too.
You can, but
inspiration.
Roger, not in that discipline. You look at Viv, for example, who is an exponent to the sport, meaning in terms of his ability. His ability is beyond par. You understand? Or the other example you use, right? The point is, you can't teach people those things. Those things are just innate and natural. They come with the innate born. I mean, yes, you can have the fundamentals down. You can get the fundamentals, come forward to the ball on the front foot and move across and all that sort of thing. Yes, but the innate ability that he has to pick up something early, our baller, you can't teach people these things. Those fine skills. I'm saying to you, that is what makes the difference between the ordinary and the great.
I understand.
Whether it's Sparrow, whether it's, I don't care who it is, the arts, you cannot teach people those things.
We may not get grades in certain aspect, but we may get good. Right? So I want to believe that right here in Little Nevis, we had our first Leeward Islander to make the West Indies team in El Comito Willet. Do you think that anyone who has since went on to make the West Indies team from Nevis would have said, look, I want to be like Willett making the West Indies team?
I'm sure there are. Many people would have wanted to, but how many arrived?
But that is what I'm saying. All men that arrive.
I'm saying in terms of a spin bowler. I mean, you can't say, give me a second, you can't say Derek Pryor because he was a contemporary of Willett. He bowled with Willett. Prior and during the time when Willett first made the West Indies team, and they both got on the team behind each other. So you can't say Perry. Perry was a contemporary. But tell me a spinner who would have looked at him, and he was right around so many people. But that X factor, you cannot, the quality of being a Viv or being a whatever, you cannot teach that.
I'm not saying to
as many, you would have many replicas of that all around the world. Or in Nevis, will it tell whatever the case is?
Maybe the word inspiration should be spoken.
Exactly.
I spoke to inspiration and inspiring, but for some reason Glendale is sticking with teaching. But that is right.
I thought I heard teaching
I'm
not saying that I didn't say teaching. I'm not saying that at all. But I also said I spoke to inspire and inspiration. And the record is there.
I don't know.
Well, it takes a lot of stuff. I mean, you really are talking about recognizing talent and trying to make the best of it, connecting them with people who probably play the same sport or in the same art form, do the same art form, and for them to be inspired. And you're talking also about creating facilities and conditioning and reconditioning minds as it relates to the goals they're trying to achieve. There's a lot of things you can't really teach, but there are a lot of things you can improve upon by probably, as you say, I mean, connecting them to people that would inspire them. When I say connecting, I mean exposing them to their not just their upbringing, the whole demeanor and mindset. But you just can't have a carbon copy. You know, of them in a sense. You know, who can match El Comido with it? There have not been any division that have. And to me, El Comido will it probably throughout the whole. Every time I see a left arm spin, even just the other day when they had the Caribbean thing, CPL, you know, every leg spin I see, who is a left-hander, it tends to bring me back to think about El Comido, will it, you know, and so I can partly understand what you're on about. I can partly understand that what Glenn is on about in a sense, and but I think, as I say, the word inspiration can probably be a better word.
Roger, these are once in a generation kind of people. You guys like Viv, you don't come again. Will it? Give me a second. You don't see that again. I can't remember. I'm trying to drill down my brain to figure if the West Indies had a left arm spinner. Leg spin prior to Willett. I mean, I don't know. Rafid Jumadine and Janali. Webbo, help me. You know, I don't know which one was left hand, but these are things you cannot teach. These are once in a generation kind of people.
And even though you see them today, you still don't see them
bold
again. The way.
You don't see these
El Cobo.
like that.
Gentlemen, I understand.
You can't teach these things.
I understand, but what I'm saying, somebody may have been inspired by Willett himself making the Western Sea. Maybe not.
Oh, many people.
Not many people
But
have.
this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. You know, people are inspired, and you have to create that atmosphere. Let me look at it at a different way, because I'm trying to bring, you know, simple things, and we are not understanding for some reason. Now, let us look at Nevis. Let's look at Nevis as a continent and not an island, just for a brief moment. And so we don't have easy access to the beaches. And maybe I cannot swim, but for some reason I always wanted to swim, because maybe I look at Phelps and those guys. And then someone built a swimming pool. Because the swimming pool is there now, I can't swim. And as Glendale rightfully said, you probably have to want to. But because the swimming pool is there now, you would now, it create that atmosphere that, so you can go and learn to swim.
Can I circle back?
Facility.
Sure. What would you do to create a politician? What would you do practically? Outline it for me, so we can see how you can create a politician. The perfect politician, the epitome of what's the politician you have in your mind that you want to create for society. Tell me how you do that and how you teach people how that politician is. It ought to be.
Again, Mr. Herbert Glendale, I don't think that you... And here's where we need discussion, we need open discussion. People have different ideas, and people understand things that is said in different ways. As I believe that you have done tonight, what I said, you, in my opinion, you have misunderstood what I have said, and now putting it in a way that I probably should now show how I can create a politician. All I'm saying that we must have something in place if what was said earlier on hold truth.
Does the size influences the whether or not there should be a term limit?
Well, I would have answered that already. I'm saying when we speak to size, we don't speak to land size. We speak to right. So if the interest is not there amongst the masses,
Could I enlighten you on something?
sure, I'm willing to learn.
Jamaica. If you've been looking at the trends in terms of politics in the region, the last number of elections, right, the numbers have just been going down in terms of who show up at the polls.
Yes.
In Jamaica, for example, last election, 2020, whatever it was,
I think it's 30-something%.
they had 38% shows up at the polls. 38% of the electorate showed up at the polls in Jamaica. Last election just past year,
couple months, yeah,
2 weeks
just-
ago,
yeah.
two weeks ago, was roughly 39%, 1% higher, right? And the trend in Barbados, the trend is down below 40%, around 40% thereabout. I mean, every country, people are just somehow detaching themselves from the politic. You understand? There's a lack of interest. There's a lack of connection. And again, we're talking about what's happening here in St. Stephenson, and we discussed the lack of referendums, the lack of engagement, and people feeling they have no stake in the society, no stake in the society, or no stake in the political process. That's rather, and that is why they waste of time. You understand? What's the point? Get it? And people are walking away from that. It's not a good thing. And that's why I used the word overlords earlier in the discussion to describe those who ascend themselves to power or get themselves in power, in political power, and somehow they know everything, when really half of them don't really know them much. And I'm saying to you, there must be a re-engagement if we want, in terms of holding this country together and this society together, and keeping people engaged. It's very important to keep people engaged. Because
Interestingly, we speak of the low turnouts of the polls. We speak about the persons, the masses may not have the interests of, for whatever reason. But in the Caribbean, we have at least two political parties, main political parties, in all the Caribbean islands. So I'm simply saying that, maybe the message that is sent out by those in government and those in opposition. Because if I am in government and my message is not resonating with the masses, then I would want to believe that the message from the opposition should resonate and bring out people. Because I'm sure you would agree that if there's a low voter turnout, most times it is to the advantage of the party in government.
no, Roger, you got it wrong.
Okay.
The low voter turnout generally, you got it right. A low voter turnout, sorry for that. A low voter turnout means that the government that's in power probably would survive. It's called, that's why people who are incumbents who run politics do voter suppression. It is important as part of their politics. All right, you might say voter suppression is unethical. You want to teach politics, and you want to teach. But if if a person is a politician in office, it's within his interest, and particularly if he's been in office for successive terms, is to do voter suppression. Do things, you understand? Meaning that even to pay, well, sorry, that's illegal, but find ways of getting people, stopping people from coming to the polls. You find ways of discouraging people from coming to the polls. You understand? Because a high turnout is advantage to the
Opposition.
Mm-hmm. You see?
I understand that.
So there's no ethics. We could talk all the flowery things about politics, but again, at the end of the day, when you drill down deep, the ethics, go through the window.
But
there's no ethics in politics.
But what I'm saying, Glendale, right? If the party in government is doing that, then I am saying, what message is the opposition is sending? Because
the opposition want to get in power.
Right. So if the opposition want to get in power, their message should be for persons to turn out. And if their message is not appealing, then persons may not turn out.
That could be correct. And at the same time, people are just turned off by the process. Period. The process turns off people over time, because it's the same group of what would they call them? Cowboys and Indians. the same group.
So should the process be changed?
It's just changing the cheers. That's all it is.
So should the process be changed?
What I'm trying to say to you is just changing the cheers. That's all. You sit in that chair, I sit in this chair, and then round and round and round we go. And people are turned off by it because there is no result.
So are you saying that if a particular country, the opposition comes into power, that the people may think that is the same old thing? It's just a question.
That's the reason why that's one of the reasons the main reason why people are not showing up. And they get turned off.
Is it because they
withdraw from the process?
Is it because they don't have confidence in the opposition? I'm not speaking specifically to any country.
They don't have confidence in the opposition or those in government. Then okay. Simple put. I don't know how else to put it. The people don't get to a point where they don't care. All right, is the laws of diminishing returns that you keep doing bad. After a while, people you just give up on you.
But I understand you, Glendale. But how do we make them care, quote unquote, care again? Because I believe that it's important for us as a society to take an active part in elections.
You got to take risk. In politics, you got to take risk, and you have to be willing to go outside of the box. Meaning, in terms of be for something, stand for something grand, stand for something. Take a position, a major position. And once you're taking a transformation,
even if persons,
once you're taking a transformational position, it gets people's attention. Okay. You understand? It gets people up. Not the same old. You got to be able to go outside of the norm. Don't play it safe. All right, Trumpers, you get huge turnout. Obama, you got huge turnout because the message of hope, or whatever. You got to be able to spark the imagination of people, and to bring people out. You understand? To make people crawl out of the house to come out to vote in the cold, or to come out to vote. You know what I'm saying? Want to make a difference. Your message has to be one of a difference, transformational. You're willing to change the direction of the country in a major way.
And the bottom line should be hope.
I didn't tell you what the bottom line.
I'm asking. If it sounds like a statement, I'm sorry. Forgive me. But it's really a question.
Well, hope is always there. We always want hope. We always want hope to be the essential part of what we're doing. I would imagine that would be the case. But again, you cannot run politics safe, and if you want to win, and if you want to get big turnout, it has to be consequential to people. You have to make the election consequential. You feel me?
Mm-hmm.
There's not a way to up the turnout.
So you think within the last 15, 20 years, an election was consequential?
In Nevis, I think it?
And I think it's Nevis. And do you think that any elections on the horizon would be consequential?
I'm thinking about which elections I thought was consequential. Was a turn, brought out people. What do you think now?
Well,
in our recent history.
Well, this is very difficult.
Okay, can I give an example? Sure. Consequential election was 1979 election. 1979 election. Secession at all costs election. Remember that? right?
Mm,
That
I
was
heard of it.
that was a consequential election. I mean, I remember seeing I did a referendum where they got 90-something% of the people.
98% I heard.
Correct. In the early 70s, yeah, and then 79. That was a consequence. There was a turning point. Like I used the word watershed moment in our history. And we went into independence with that election, and with preparation for secession, because the Constitution was written specifically with the idea to go into secession in a few years. That once Nevis had built out its infrastructure, that is why it's still that we have the document
113.
around 42 years after, and the document, and we spoke about the Green Paper earlier. It was also that was in play. Earlier, but all the politicians, you see, no politician in Sengi, I don't call it a plain, Webbo, please don't forgive me. No politicians in Sengi got the balls to give up power, to save the union. You understand? Because who has power? They talk about it, before, but when they get in there, they love the power. Because you have the power over Nevis, you have the power over the people. And politicians are like greedy vultures.
So you think the Green Paper would have been better?
Well, that is the utopic idea. With settling the grievances between things. But they don't care. They just care about power and consuming power. And you know what the great thing would be? I think they would be so magnanimous. You understand? If they look for the greater good, and in history would look at them kindly, because then Douglas had a chance. He had a chance to deal with that constitutional matter, with constitutional reform. And to me, that had he done it, he would have gone on in history as a major pioneer in this country, just like the likes of any of the so-called heroes. He had an opportunity, he squandered it. Because constitutional reform, it would have settled the issue. The issues, it would have mean that the little boy from just upside the little boy from Hanley's Road could one day wake up and not guarantee, but at least has the same access as a guy from Boyd's, a guy from Sandy Point to be prime minister. That does not exist today.
It doesn't exist?
Well, it exists. What I'm saying, in terms of in terms of the possibilities, it exists. But the possibility in terms of, you understand?
The probability is low.
Yeah, probability, the right word, sorry. Probability is less for an individual. You understand?
But you want the probability to be equal.
I want it to be equal, equitable, and that's what I'll be asking.
When you think that will happen?
Well, with them out there, I don't know. With mankind?
That's the last word. This program repeats at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Grantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Join Keith Scarborough at 8 o'clock on Thursday evening for Government at Work. A place you can spend all of your evenings right here in the Eastern Caribbean's powerhouse. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Thought that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertiser.